Hello, thank you for joining us today for the Urshan Leadership Minute, our weekly video vlog. I'm Brent, Coltharp, president here of Urshan College, Urshan Graduate School of Theology. Glad that you're joining us once again to talk about the important subject of leadership and our role in leading, whether it's in the church, business, ministry, or private venture. We started talking about last week organizational life cycles and just the idea that organizations have life cycles like individuals do. And the only way to keep an organization from eventually declining and dying, something that none of us like to think about when we put our blood, sweat, and tears, so to say, in an organization, is that you have to start a new S-curve or continue to grow and be innovative, looking for ways to be effective in a changing world. See, a world around us is changing, and so we have to see how can we be effective and efficient in the current world that we're operating in, the current context that we have. In fact, that's the reason organizations exist, because by organizing to be more effective and more efficient than we can be on our own as individuals. And so continuing along that same line, I want to talk to you today about embracing change. Change is normal. It's a normal aspect of our life and the world that we live in. As I've mentioned previously, when it comes to our brain waves or our heart, any kind of EEG, EKG, different tests that we take, we don't want a straight line. That means something has gone drastically wrong. We expect there to be ups and downs. That's sort of the rhythm of life. And that's what it is in organizations too. Change is not an option. In fact, let me just repeat that. Change is not an option. Change happens, no matter whether we like it or not. So the question is not, will there be change? We all change. That's how God designed us to change. We get older. Our organizations get older. The question is, will we be intentional and strategic with our change, or will it be unintentional and chaotic? Those are the decisions we have to make. If we want to be effective leaders, we need to be intentional and strategic with our change. Hamels of Harvard, he quoted Bill Gates of the famed Microsoft saying this. Here's what Bill Gates of Microsoft said. He said, Microsoft is always only 2 years away from failure. 2 years away from failure. When I originally read that by Hamel's writing, I was a little surprised by that because Microsoft seems to be such a big company. You would think if anybody could afford to coast a little bit and to sort of become even a little complacent, comfortable, it would be Microsoft. Companies like that, except they realize, as Bill Gates said, that there's always some new teenager in his garage coming up with the next product. And so Bill Gates said that they are always 2 years away from extinction. That's always stuck with me, and it's let me know that we have to realize that change is a natural part, and so we have to embrace it. I've often heard people say, well, if you've always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. Well, the fact is that's not true. If you always do what you've always done, there can come a time when what you're doing is no longer relevant. Think about the maker of buggy whips. Back in the day when our society was, horse and buggies, and buggy whips were a part of every store. You needed a good buggy whip for, to go along with your ride, so to say. And you made the best. Hands down, you made the best buggy whips in the world. And you've always made great buggy whips. Well, what do you do when no one needs a buggy whip anymore? You see, even though you continue to do something really well, when there's no longer a need for it, doesn't matter how good of a buggy whip you make, the world has changed. We have to realize this because of the changing world. It's not maybe what we're doing is bad, but maybe it's no longer relevant in a new world. Now we know that there are some things that are always relevant. I'm talking many of you who are tuning in today are Christian leaders, and we understand that the gospel is always relevant. That's why Paul said in Romans, he said, I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Jesus Christ. It is the power, not a power. It's the power of God to salvation to those who believe. And so the gospel is always relevant, apostolic doctrine, Pentecostal, these things are always relevant and they don't change. They're the values and the mission, they don't change. I'm not talking about those things today. I'm talking about many times the methods we employ, the activities, maybe even ministries that we employ that are relevant today, but maybe not tomorrow. For instance, the church that I pastor in Aurora, Illinois, historically, we had a thriving bus ministry, and we are so thankful for the number of children and young people who came to our church on our bus ministry. We have leaders in our church right now that came to our church on a school or a church bus. That's how they came. They came, received the baptism of the Holy Ghost, became a part of our congregation, and now serving and leading. And we are thankful for that. But what do you do when a pandemic comes and you have social distancing and masking and even churches shut down? No matter how effective your bus ministry is, overnight it can come to a halt simply because the world has changed. See, change is inevitable. And so how we deal with that is important. And so we can't resist change. There are areas where we need to be able to look for how we need to change to continue to fulfill our mission, which doesn't change, and the gospel. So how do we remain effective in a changing world? Those are the questions we have to answer. So I want to encourage you to look at change in a different way. Look at change as something to embrace, something to make sure it's not chaotic, but that we are intentional about our changes, that we are starting new S-curves to go through change. And let me tell you something as well. People are not as resistant to change as we think they are. In fact, if people think they're gaining something or if it's their choice, they often embrace change. Now, I know we think no one likes change, but I've never talked to anyone yet that didn't like a raise, a change in their pay, that they were getting more. Maybe not if they were getting a cut less, but if they were getting more, perceived they were getting more, I've never talked to someone who didn't like that raise. Most people like new clothes, new cars, new homes, new jobs, even new relationships, because first of all, they have a voice in it and they are gaining something about it. So I would say that the idea that we don't like change is really not true. What I have found out is many times it's not change that we don't like, it's transition. It's moving away from something. You see, change, we are often focusing on the result, the end result. And many times we neglect the path that takes us from where we are to the fulfillment or the change becoming the new normal in our organizations and our leadership. There are 3 phases of transition that it's important to understand. Change is just an act. Change is something that takes place in a moment, like flipping a switch. You can change something by flipping a switch. But when you flip the switch and turn on the lights when it's been dark for many hours, it doesn't mean that your eyes have adjusted automatically. There is a process of transitioning from one environment to another. And so as we go into change initiatives, many times people think that followers and members and constituents are pushing back because they don't like change, and we haven't given full attention to the transition process that takes place from going from where we were to where we are or want to be. And so understanding these 3 transition points, I think will help us in managing change, leading change. First of all, it has to go with ending. We have to let something go to go to somewhere new. And this is tough. This is emotional. It's not about what's best. It's not about logic. It's about emotion. When we bought our new home, I guess I shouldn't say new. We've lived there for about a decade now, but we came to the home we live in now. It was much better for us. All of our kids were going to have bedrooms and a lot more space where we had been crammed into a very small home. And yet, when we pulled out of that driveway from the last time, I was very sad. And the reason was I'd brought kids, my children, home from the hospital to this house. I had so many memories that were connected to there. It was an emotional experience for me. It's not that I didn't think our new home was going to be better. It's not that I didn't think it was going to be progress. It's just I had a part of me, a piece of me, that to this day, over a decade later, I still drive by that home to remember those important memories. When you leave to build a new church and you're leaving the church, the auditorium you were in for the last time, realize it's not that people aren't excited about going to a new auditorium. But when they look at that old auditorium, they remember places where God touched their lives, maybe where they repented, maybe the baptismal where they were baptized. And so it's not that change is not good, it's that many times we need to celebrate the past and we need to realize we're leaving something to go somewhere else. And so that is the first stage in a transition. The second is a neutral zone. It's we're making the changes, but they haven't become normal yet. They're still new, they're still awkward, we're still figuring it out. And this is a wonderful time in organizations because this is a time where we can be innovative, we can improve our systems and our processes as we haven't put the new into concrete yet. And then the last stage is this new beginning where the change becomes standard operating procedure. What you have to realize is this exciting new change that leaders are thrilled about, pretty soon will become tomorrow's tradition. That people will look back and they'll say, this is the way we've always done it. Why? Because that's the nature of life. There's change. There's change in organizations, whether in the church, whether in business. And understanding it and being intentional about change can make it benefit us and benefit the organizations that we are leading. Thank you for joining us today again for our Leadership Minute as we talk about change and embracing change. I hope that you'll join us again next time as we continue to talk about the important subject of leadership and the impact it has on our lives and those who follow us.